So, Old English syntax morphology actually continues today. We'll continue to talk about it, and then we'll hopefully get to do a little bit of Beowulf reading, because part of your thing is in this class is that you will have to do a reading, Old English reading at the end of the, or you will get to do a reading, not have to, at the end of the class as part of your grade, and it's going to be a friendly reading. But anyway, so we'll practice for that. We'll try to do this even though we get done with Old English. We will be occasionally doing some readings. But before that, let's kind of go over what I have here. And this was the exercise that I posted. It doesn't show. It's on Blackboard, and I posted also the answers to this exercise. So this was about the cases. Has anyone tried to do it? Yeah. So what you have been given is the case. We're talking about 4 cases. What are the 4 cases? Nominative, genitive, accusative, and dative. And those cases have been given to you. If there's a noun phrase, the exercise gives you the what kind of a phrase we're talking about. And then you need to decide why that particular case is used in that particular position in the sentence. Is it nominative because it's the subject? So if you have are doing this exercise, you see in, that's, that noun phrase is nominative. Then you go back to this page and look for nominative up there, and you have 3 choices for why it is a nominative. So your job is in this exercise to decide why a case is used. And the choices are, it's the subject of the sentence, it's the complement of the be verb, so you have to find a be verb if there's one, and then the third possibility is that it's the direct address, like the vocative, or like in Latin there's this special vocative case, like you, or teacher, I want to talk, or hey, you would be the vocative. So nominative is used for that as well. If you see a G after the noun phrase, then you go up here and you choose one of these 5 options. Why is it the genitive? And if you see a D, you've got even more options. 6, dative is often used with prepositions. With most prepositions you use the dative. If it's the accusative, most often it's going to be the direct object of the sentence. So this kind of presupposes that you know what a subject is, what a direct object is, and what an indirect object is, and so on. Indirect object is the dative. Dative's job is to do the indirect, indicate the indirect object. So you kind of like have to go back and forth, see what the case has been given as, and then you go and find the reason for why. And that gives these types of hands-on exercises. We do quite a bit of these, and I've given you the answers because we don't have time to go over them here in class because we meet only once a week, so we try to squeeze other things in here. During a normal semester, we'd be going over these in class. But you've got the answers there on Blackboard. And here, I think we could do a little bit of practice reading. These are the last 4 sentences in that exercise, and these came out a little bit bigger here so you can actually see. So the gloss here is not wanted Alexander, that to grant, it's so the words are glossed underneath them into present day English. And of course in present day English we wouldn't say it that way. We would say Alexander did not want to grant that. but the word order was different. So let's just read this. Nolde Alexander das Tygthian. Nolde Alexander das Tygthian. Okay, and here we have das, a genitive, and then you go back to the list of what genitive was used for and choose the correct one. So 19, there were 200, oh, by the way, I wanted to point out this nolde. It's a contracted form, ne, wolde, not wanted, nolde. So Old English used those contractions in the similar way as we use contractions for other things in present day English. So in 19 you have this grapheme here, which we haven't really talked much about. It's a capital thorn. Thär waren 240 wera. So there were 240 men, and that's the word order. It happens to be the same as in present day English. So let's read it. There were 240 wera. We don't use that word anymore, wera, except if you know this word in present day English. Werewolf, man-wolf. So that's where we've kept the wera Old English term.
Or the concept of verb in Old English, the verb it was basically like your price if somebody in Anglo-Saxon society murdered you or murdered someone in your family.
Yes, wergild. Yes, exactly. And we kind of like marginally use that word anyway, but if you stop somebody on the street, they probably don't necessarily know what a wergild. So, you can just kind of pay off, okay, I killed your son, and here's the money for it. So, interesting concept. So 20, let us go and sacrifice to our God. So here we have dative. Oh, by the way, in 19, wera is in the genitive form, where it's where in the nominative. So it's in the genitive form because it's a number, a higher number, 148. So 20, we have orum gode in dative because it's the indirect object, sacrifice to our God. So lätas usfaran and offrian orum gode. Lätas usfaran and offrian orum gode. And 21. Here we have dative again because it's in this special phrase of time. Thu ilkan jere sende Alfred König skipherre on ENGL. So let's read it. Thu ilkan jere sende Alfred König skipherre on ENGL. Okay. Ship is like ship armies, ship forces. Okay, and here's the other exercise that I posted about Old English cases, and this doesn't show like anything, but it's basically the same thing. You've got the underlined forms. Underlined words there, noun phrases, and then you figure out what the case might have been. Okay, so when we look at an Old English text, it is very, very helpful to notice that a lot of the small grammatical words have not really changed almost at all. And I'll post this PowerPoint so you don't need to copy these scribblings to your notes. So anyway, Old English had a lot of these that kind of very much resemble present-day English words because that's where we get them. The relative pronoun, in present-day English we have a lot of relative pronouns or a number of relative pronouns like that and which and who gets the forms whose and whom. But in Old English there was this one relative pronoun that was the. And here we have the thorn in the beginning of the sentence. It stands for the voiceless fricative. So it was the. And each was elch. So that's where we get it. The pronunciation has changed a little bit. Which was whilch. Old English had these wonderful consonant clusters starting with the H, and they didn't think that they were a big deal, but that consonant cluster got later dropped. Even though there still are today some people who would say which, like if you make the distinction between these two words, you probably use a voiceless W here, which, and which, right? So how many of you would say which? Which person do you mean?
So sometimes I do it when I'm being intentional.
Exactly, it's intentional when you want to emphasize something. The same thing would be like, for most people, these are homophones, or homonyms, actually, pronounced in the same way. And here's the same kind of difference. How many of you would say whale and whale in the same way? Yeah. So if you know someone who says whale as opposed to whale, two different words, then that would be a phonemic difference. And that would be the voiceless W, and this would be the voiced W. And this voiceless W, it goes back to the Old English combination of graphemes and phonemes. Whale. So anyway, there has been some change, and this voiceless W is really kind of sort of disappearing from the language, so that we will have more and more of these homonymic words that sound the same even though they mean a different thing. Okay, and then we have any, which comes from Old English Annie. Remember that at the end of the word the g is pronounced as y after E, a front vowel, so Annie. And it's no wonder that Annie became any, because we can barely hear the E at the end of the word. So Annie became any. And all was ale, so that's almost the same. None was non. Such was swilch. We still have the ch there, the affricate there at the end of the word, just like the Old English people had. Swilch became such. And some meant one, and it was sum. So sum, man would mean one, man, a man. Sum, it functioned like a determiner, like an article in Old English. And man was something that, we've lost this in other Germanic languages, many other Germanic languages. The word man is used as the passive. If we don't know who does something, then man does something. It doesn't mean man does something, but one person does something. We have like you should do something, we should do something, they should do something, the very generic pronoun use. And that's what it was. It was an indefinite pronoun standing for like one or they or we all should do something or are doing something. That has been lost, but in other Germanic languages it's still alive. And that was man. And it didn't mean a man, it just meant that one person needs to do something. The German has that, and Swedish has that too. So let's read these and get an idea that these are really very, very familiar words, and these appear often in the texts because these are the function words. So, the, ouch, quilch, Annie, L. Note that there's the long O at the end, so I probably didn't hold it long enough. L. Okay. Non. Swilch. Sum. Man. Perfect. Okay, so a few words about Old English verbs. Old English had 7 subclasses of strong verbs, which means that these were verbs that they changed their forms for different forms. So 7 subclasses of strong verbs, and they changed in the stem vowel. This is called ablaut. So we still have, these are not like in the Old English form, but sing, sang, sung, it shows that that's a strong verb in present day English. They are often referred to as irregular verbs, but they were not irregular in Old English. They were just, one of these 7 classes of strong verbs. Drink, drank, drunk is another strong verb in present day English that we get from Old English, from one of these 7 subclasses of the strong verbs. And what we refer to as irregular verbs like eat, ate, eaten, go and gone, sing, sang, sung, drink, drank, drunk, write, wrote, written, read, read, read. We refer to these as irregular, but they derive from the Old English strong 7 subclasses of strong verbs. Choose, chose, chosen in Old English was cheosan, cheosan, puron, poren. And I'm not expecting you to, if you look at these verbs, to memorize them or anything, but just kind of like recognize that, hey, that's a strong verb. And the biggest thing to get out of this is that today's quote-unquote irregular verbs, they have these ancestors, direct lineage most often to the Old English strong verbs. Now, Old English also had these weak verbs. Remember, in Germanic, the dental preterite verbs were added, and these are our so-called regular verbs. And regular verbs in present-day English, in writing, their past tense form has ed, and their past participle form has also ed, like walk, walked, walked. We write it with ed, but it has allomorphic variation, of course, because if we have jog, then it's jogged, and I have jogged, okay. But walked, I walked yesterday with a t, and I have walked t also. These are called dental preterite because they have d or t, and those are alveolar in present day English, but they are kind of like lumped together. The term that is used in historical linguistics for t and d is typically dental. Preterite means pretty much, it's not identical as past tense, but if you conceptualize for our purposes, it's fine. So these are the dental past tense forms, which have the d or t. So sleep, slept, slept. We don't write it with ed, but it still has that t, in the same way as walk, walked, walked. sleep, slept, slept. Okay, so that's really, in a nutshell, some information about the Old English verbs. And let's talk a little bit about the verb to be. It's an interesting verb in present day English because it has a lot of forms. It has the most forms, variant forms, more forms than any other verb in present day English. So we have be, and if I is the subject, what is the form then? And then are, if you is the subject, then if we have she as the subject, then the form is, and then this can be in the past tense, was, and where, and then being, the ing form, the progressive form, and then the past participle been. 8. So it has 8 different forms in present day English. Of course, it's an incredibly common verb, so that's why these forms probably have been kept. But it has also a history. The reason why we have these various forms goes back to Old English again. So it's to be today. It's an amalgam of several different roots, and like wesan gave us was and where. You remember the law, Werner's law, that accounts for the variation here between and and those are yet 2 different forms. And then beon was the form that gives be and its different forms, being and been. And then we've got the are, which is actually, thanks to the Vikings, it was brought to England from Scandinavia, that form. So
Wait, which one?
are.
Oh.
Yeah. So yep. So all these different forms, they kind of are historically explainable. Okay. Then there is this concept of so-called preterite present verbs that have the strong preterite have taken on present meaning, which is these are the modal auxiliaries of today. But they used to be, in Old English, they used to be meaningful main verbs. So Schulen meant have to, kunnan meant no. So, an Old English speaker would say, like if you say, I can speak, I can, I know Old English. Kunnan would be the I know Old English, I can Old English. That's how it was used. So can, kunnan was used in the meaning no as a main verb. Maahan meant be able to. Today it's just an auxiliary. It needs a main verb in present day English. Dare, the same thing. In Old English, I dare would be ich dare, and then it didn't necessarily need a main verb. Ahan, have or own, gave us ought, which is also a modal auxiliary in present day English. It cannot be used alone. I ought something. And thorvan was need, and that gave us must, but not directly. not directly, because thorvan itself got lost. We don't have that form anymore. Okay. So, and this PowerPoint will be there, so you don't necessarily need to copy everything down, but of course, you can if you are a fast writer. So two tenses in Old English, just like in present day English, past and preterite, and past and present. That's actually a mistake. I have to fix that. So past and present, and when we today sometimes, you know, when I teach grammar, and we say that present day English has only two tenses, past and present. Students are sometimes like, what about the future? And then it's like, there is no future in English. So we can, of course, we express future in different ways, and we do it by using adverbs, for instance. The train leaves tomorrow at noon. And that's how we do it. But if we were to talk about future as a grammatical category in English, then we would have to have like a suffix, for instance, or an affix. Could be a prefix too, but in English it would probably be a suffix. So the train leave will tomorrow at noon. So it would be a suffix, bound suffix attached to a verb, and that's what we would have to have in order to talk about future as a grammatical category in English. But even in Old English there wasn't anything like that. So we would use like a periphrastic way of saying. We could, of course, say the train will leave, but this is not a suffix that attaches to the verb. And very often we use just the present tense. The train leaves, and then give the adverbs to indicate when it happens, to disambiguate. So this has remained the same. And also Schulan, it expressed obligation in Old English. Willan expressed desire in Old English. But then by late Old English, these verbs, they started to express the sense of future time. And I have another typo there. How horrible. So we have gotten these modal auxiliaries from Old English, but their function has kind of changed. In Old English they were main verbs, and now they always have to have, they are now indicating a main verb, like I will go, I shall read, I must study. Okay. A few words about adjectives, and this is just kind of like picking up some of the stuff that your book elaborates on, but just kind of like give a quick overview of how Old English worked. The nominal system was very important, and there is in your book you have that one exercise where you are asked to translate into Old English. I really encourage you to do it and do all the exercises in Old English. That's going to be helpful, and it's nice that the book, it has the answers at the end. So adjectives in Old English, they were the most highly inflected words, the part of speech that was the most highly inflected. And even when we get to Middle English, a lot of this stuff has kind of inflections have disappeared. By the end of Middle English, you know, Middle English is legitimately separately called Middle English from Old English because it's so different. Lexicon-wise, of course, because it has a lot of French influence there, but also grammar-wise. And I will post that link to when we start Middle English, where there's this explanation about to a video where the big dividing line between Old English and Middle English was that a lot of the inflectional endings just got dropped. And Old English is this relatively highly inflectional language still. That's why you're doing all these exercises on nominatives and genitives and datives and accusatives, just to practice that and looking at all these different forms. But a lot of that, most of that got dropped. We have kept in present day English the pronoun system, which still is a remnant of Old English inflections. And then we have the verbs are inflected to an extent as well. But interestingly, the adjectives in Old English, they were the most highly inflected category, and that continued to Middle English. So when we do Middle English, we'll talk a little bit about the weak and strong adjectives. The adjectives got the comparative ending just like we do in present day English, and that comparative ending was ra, and the superlative ending was either st, or ost, or osta, or est, or esta. So a lot of variation there. There was a lot of dialectal variation in Old English, so you find these different forms. But have we kept this or not? We have, right? Because we say someone is strong, someone is stronger, and someone is the strongest. In Old English, strong was strang, and then the comparative was strengra, something is stronger, and strengest, someone is the strongest. Now you notice that there are these. Can you see those little red circles there? Strong in the positive form, non-inflected form, and then in the comparative and superlative, all of a sudden you have a. So this was one of the issues also that gets its explanation from the e, ye, or front mutation or umlaut, because in the word strong, comes in front of a nasal and the in front of a nasal, it became e. So that's why it's strengra and strengest, the comparative and superlative forms. And we do have a remnant of this in present day English when we talk about people who are strong, and we have regularized this, so it's stronger and strongest in present day English, but the noun, related noun, has strength, it has the e from Old English, and this also, it gets its explanation from front mutation, also called e mutation, also called umlaut, and that was when there was an e or a ye in a form of a word later, and it changed the low, back vowel into actually it was this vowel that is a low back vowel, and it became a mid front vowel. So became a in front of an n. So anyway, sounds kind of complicated, but it was relatively mechanical. Another instance of the mutation, ye mutation or umlaut or front mutation, comes from the word old English word old. Today we still have this variation like old, and of course it's compared regularly older and oldest, but sometimes you see these forms, elder and eldest. And that is directly explicable by the front mutation. Also, in Old English, ea, eald, became, the ea became u. Of course, we've lost the u, so now we have the e there. So in the comparative and superlative forms, so eald was old, and older was uldra, and uldest was the oldest. Does that make sense? So that today we still have, she's my elder sister, and the elders in the church, and the eldest son, and so on. This kind of a looks like an irregularity, but it really isn't when you know its history, that it was just a phonological adaptation called the front mutation. Okay, and then the pronouns, which we have kept a lot of them, but they sounded quite different. And now I want to say that there was a lot of variation in terms of the pronoun system in Old English, dialectal variation in certain, like, you know, in certain dialects they would have been pronounced a little bit differently. But the first person singular pronoun, here we have the nominative, accusative, genitive, and dative forms, which, as you will see, we have pretty much kept most of them. Like we have I, the subject form, me, the object form. We have mine, and me, like give that to me, or he gave me something. So, so these come pretty much directly from Old English, not identically, because, like, for instance, the form met, the accusative dialectal form, that was lost, but still. Let's read these. So we have I was itch, me, met, mean, me. Easy, because there's this connection. The Old English itch, which became e first and then I during early modern English, it's just like, you know, we tend to drop sounds sometimes. So each became I, each became I. Then we have, let's go first to the plural, the last column there. We and we, us, our, and us. So let's read these. We, us, ure, us. Very familiar. Ure became our. But then Old English had this wonderful dual form, which meant that, you know, we too, if I want to talk to the rest of you and refer to Kimber and me, so I would say with the two of us. So this, unfortunately, we have lost, but it was with, unk, unker, unk. Very good. And by the way, there was a little error in. I usually watch this if I post a video for you to watch that someone else has given a lecture, for instance. There is this one man who is giving a lecture about wit and yit, the dual forms, and he got them mixed up. So wit is we two, and yit is you two. So, but that was the only error I spotted there. Okay, then the word you in present day English is kind of like, you know, really impoverished, because we don't anymore separate the forms thou and you, thou singular you, and you the plural you. Of course, you know, Texas English has adapted to this by adding the plural y'all, so we can make a difference. You and y'all, right? But Old English used two different words for these. So the singular you was thu. Let's read these. Thu, the, thech, thin, and the. Okay. And the plural form, the last column, it was ye, eo, or eover. Eover, eo. All right. And then they had the wonderful you too. You too need to do something. So that was yit, ink, inker, ink. Unfortunately, we've lost that, but there probably isn't that much use for referring to we two or the two of you. And then the third person forms, masculine, feminine, neuter, and plural. All were separated, and you can see that some of these we've kept, some of these we have changed due to language influence. So he is pretty much the same, but we have lost one form there. Which one have we lost? Hine, yes. So he, hine, his, him. So him took over. The dative form collapsed with accusative. So I saw him. Him is not anymore hine, but an Old English person would say hine. Then she, this has changed. She has been introduced into present-day English, probably because of phonological differentiation. Some forms were very similar. They started all with an H, so there was really need, but we have kept her. So heo, here, here, here. Very good. Then the neuter, it, hit, his, him. Same as the two last were the same as with the masculine, but the hit form just lost the H in the beginning, and we just kept the it, even though you may still hear somebody say hit don't matter no more, hit don't matter no more dialectally, and that comes directly from Old English, so it's an archaism. Very cool. Okay. And the plural, we have they and their and them, and we borrowed those from Scandinavian, from the Vikings, because there was such an intimate relation between the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings. Languages don't typically borrow function elements from another language. It's very rare that you would go and borrow a pronoun from another language like Scandinavian, the Norse. But that if that happens, it's an indication of very deep-going relationships between like in the Anglo-Saxons and the Vikings. There was a lot of intermarriage. They were in contact a lot. So in that kind of an external situation, a pronoun just might get borrowed from another language. But Old English, they and their and them was different. So it was here, 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 him. So you notice that there was kind of like a need to differentiate, because him was the form also for the neuter and the masculine. So let's make this different, and then you borrow the Scandinavian they, their, and them. That's all for today.